Hello everyone, it's Tatsu with YouTube Live with Real Progressives. Sorry I've been away for a while. I've been kind of under the weather and traveling from New York City. So excuse me if my voice is a little hoarse here. So what has been the news, and Happy New Year to everyone. I guess this is my first live stream since the New Year's Eve, so kind of talk from my car, if you remember. So, okay, so this is kind of a pickup of where we left off on previous talk, and that is the first link here in the notes in the description. So, in that talk, just going to pull up the live chat room here. In that talk, we had, I was talking about Obama on mass surveillance, habeas corpus, or the suspension thereof, the National Defense Authorization Act of 2012, Obama on the Espionage Act, Obama on DODD-FRANK, immigration, war, torture, drone strikes, and so on. And what we find out here is that this kind of never ends with the administration. And the title of that talk was, Obama has gifted Trump fascism. And in the second link, we have kind of an interesting article by someone who I didn't know prior to yesterday. I'm just going to throw that up here. So this is Commander-in-Chief Donald Trump will have terrifying powers. Thanks, Obama. And the link is below. And this is kind of reiterates what I've been saying for a while. And actually, this came out just a couple of weeks prior to my published video. And if you want to read it, you can go through it. But this is prior to the events of this week, and actually a couple weeks ago. And what has happened since that time, late November, and now, is that Obama has signed into law the National Defense Authorization Act of 2017. So for those of you, including myself, who aren't familiar with the NDAA, the National Defense Authorization Act is something we should all be looking at towards the end of the year. And as we'll find out, there's another piece of legislation that we should also be scrutinizing very carefully, and that would be the Intelligence Authorization Act. So these two things that I'm going to talk about tonight are separate pieces of legislation, one of which has been signed into law, and one has passed the House, but not quite the Senate, and so is not law. And again, excuse me for my voice. I actually had a bout of food poisoning, believe it or not. And, as a foodist or foodie or food aficionado, that's kind of one of the requirements for the job is to get a little food poisoning once in a while. So, but I did my best to make myself presentable here. Today's the first day I've been able to stand upright and walk around, but didn't realize my voice was so bad. So I apologize for that again. Now, there's a lot of background that you need to know about the National Defense Authorization Act and some of the significant years in which our civil rights have been seriously eroded. Now, National Defense Authorization Act of 2012 was a pretty significant year, and that is the year that Obama essentially suspended habeas corpus and suspended or repealed the Posse Commandantis Act, which is something like an 1867 act, which is very relevant to things like DAPL. And what do I mean by that? Well, the Posse Commandantis Act stated that U.S. military forces cannot be used as a police force against its own civilians in the United States. So in that regard, we saw how that was used against the protesters or the water protectors in DAPL in North Dakota. So signs of a fascist police state, right? Not just random acts of bullying police officers gone rogue, but here we have coordinated efforts at the highest levels of government, basically cowering its citizenship into compliance, if not by intimidation, then by outright violence. So the journalist, writer, Pulitzer Prize winner Chris Hedges, one of my people that I look up to in journalism, and someone who I hope to meet possibly at Occupy inauguration coming up very soon, January 19th, 20th, and 21st. Please join us. I assure you there will be hundreds of thousands of people there protesting the inauguration of Donald Trump. And Real Progressives is obviously going to be there. We're going to be speaking there. We'll be with the Green Party, and we'll be holding events of our own and attending other events. So please do come. And what Chris Hedges has uncovered for us was that, well, not only uncovered, but Chris is an exceptional person, an activist, not just a writer and investigative journalist, in that he actually took to court Obama in 2012 over the NDAA, and he won. When it was appealed and overturned by the New York Supreme Court, it was declined to be heard at the Supreme Court. But obviously, Chris made his best efforts. Now, if we move on to today, some of the talk about the National Defense Authorization Act of 2017, some of the news media reports that you may have seen, probably have not have seen, because it's certainly nowhere to be found in mainstream media, and very little coverage has been given even in alternative media, is the Smith-Mundt Act of 1948. And let's take a look at that. So I have a screenshot here somewhere, and I apologize in that my slides aren't quite organized today because I literally threw everything in the app minutes before getting on here. And let me find this for you. We're in my own notes here. So the Smith-Mundt Act of 1948 basically states that, and I'm not looking at my notes here, that the propaganda of the United States cannot be used against its own citizens, right? We should be given some protections against such acrimonious activities. And let me read some of it for you here from Wikipedia. Popularly called the Smith-Mundt Act, actually the U.S. Information and Educational Exchange Act, specifies the terms in which the United States can engage in global audiences known as propaganda. So I was mistaken when I was just speaking a minute ago. This actually refers to propaganda that we present to the outside world. And if you scroll down, I can't scroll down in this for you, but one of the prominent examples is Voice of America. So Voice of America is a U.S. government-sponsored radio program. It's very much like RT back in the 1950s, right? So we had radio instead of television. We were allowed, even in Russia or the USSR, to promote, if you will, American values abroad. And, this was a genteel kind of thing, nowhere near the vitriolic, hyperbolic, untrue rhetoric of today. And this sort of helps keep the peace in a way, if you think about it, because exchanging viewpoints, how could that not be a bad thing? So, while the Smith-Mundt Act does not say that we do not engage in foreign, our own propaganda abroad, it very well defined the terms in which we do that. So this takes rips the cover off the lid and opens Pandora's box again. And why have we done this? And okay, so this part of this repealment of Smith-Mundt Act is law. It is actually. Hey, Riona, how are you doing? Just checking in with the chats here. So this part is law, and it's obviously in retaliation for what is perceived to be the Russian interference with our elections. I have covered that many times here on YouTube and on Facebook. I've uncovered everything from doing my own forensic analysis of the Podesta and DNC hacks. I have shown, and actually WikiLeaks said this today, which is, or maybe a couple of days ago, which is very ironic. Julian Assange even. I said, back in October that the Podesta hacks were something a 12-year-old could have done. And what Julian Assange has said very recently is that a 14-year-old could have done it. So, perhaps I'm overestimating the abilities of the, or actually Assange is overestimating the age requirement of someone with the knowledge and skill and ability to hack John Podesta's email. Was pretty much dead on. So, with that being said, the Smith-Mundt Act, now in 2017, it has been undone. This is the bill that was introduced into Senate by Senator Portman of Ohio, I believe. This part is law. This part is signed into, Christmas Day, very quietly signed by Obama, while everyone is celebrating. There are prior incidences where the Smith-Mundt Act law has been under attack. And I want to point you to something interesting I found on BuzzFeed here. Not that. I think it's this. Yes. Okay. It's really hard to see because the icons are really, really tiny on my controller here. So let me pull up that BuzzFeed article for you so I can tell you a little bit more about it, because I tend to scan these things very quickly. And I think I pulled this out to present here today mostly because it was written by a journalist named Michael Hastings. And Michael Hastings probably was the best investigative journalist BuzzFeed ever had. And he was killed. He died in an accident, so-called accident, where his car mysteriously sped up to 80 miles an hour in a 25-mile-an-hour residential zone, smashed into a tree in LA at 4:20 in the morning. The car engines was displaced, removed from the car from the force of the impact, thrown about 300 yards away. The car was obviously lit on fire. He probably died from the impact immediately. And he died. He died under, severe mental and emotional pressure from the stories that he was covering and the subjects that those involved, including the CIA. Now, Michael Hastings said in 2012, May, Congressmen seek to lift propaganda ban. And this was through an amendment. This amendment, the tweak to the bill, would essentially neutralize two previous acts, the Smith-Mundt Act of 1948 and the Foreign Relations Authorization Act in 1987, that had been passed to protect U.S. audiences from our own government's misinformation campaigns. So what I need to clarify for you right here is that the fake war, if you will, is a two-way. It's a dual stream type of thing. So it's our propaganda abroad, and it's the prevention of perceived fake media outlets here in the U.S. So preventing, let's say Sputnik News or RT News here, promoting their lies about whether the Russians interfered with the elections or not. So that part of foreign propaganda making its way or being censored possibly in the U.S. hasn't come true quite yet. But what is come to fruition, has come to reality, is that the definition in which our propaganda, the official U.S. line abroad, is totally on the table again and open for discussion as to what that is. What we don't know, and what a lot of the hysteria over in the media, and I'm talking mainstream media, is what their role will be in all of this. What is the role of CNN or CNN International, MSNBC over abroad? What is their role in presenting the official U.S. narrative? Is the U.S. government going to be telling journalists what to say? And we already have examples of this, obviously, within our own domestic news cycle during the election. We have many, many instances of everywhere from Donna Brazil to fake presentations of the polling results and whatnot. We were fed a fake narrative that Hillary Clinton was going to win for a year and a half, right? So, and not to toot my own horn, but I'm someone here who told the world, a very small percentage of the world who actually tuned in to me, that Donald Trump was going to win. The numbers told me in May that there was no way Hillary Clinton was ever going to win. You just have to look at the historical data from 2008 and the primary season that told you everything you need to know about Hillary Clinton being defeated. So, okay. So let's move on. I think I have. Let's move on to. Well, okay. The Sputnik article here. It does cover the NDAA. 2017. President Barack Obama spent a portion of his Christmas weekend creating a controversial anti-propaganda agency. Now, I have some excerpts of this very dangerous law for you. If I can pull it up here. NDAA 2017. I'm sorry, I have to keep looking down while I pull these up. All right. So, what we have here from the text of the National... Oh, okay. So I'm actually kind of moving on. This is the the Intelligence Authorization Act for 2017. This part is definitely very concerning, but we'll get to that in a minute. I had a few more other slides that I wanted to get to your attention. And what I wanted to do here was actually go back to boy, I'm sort of all over the place here, and I really apologize for that, but it's really hard to order the slides and the proper sequence in this app. It's not that, it's not that, it's not that. So clear this, clear this. Apologize. No. No. There it is. Okay. So, this is in the links again, but this is the National, Defense Authorization Act, sections 1021 and 1022. These are the provisions in the NDAA that Chris Hedges brought to court and successfully sued Obama in the lower courts, and was overturned in the Supreme Court of New York. Congress affirms the authority of the President to use all necessary and appropriate force pursuant to the authorization for the use of military force, including the authority of the armed forces of the United States to detain covered persons. And what is a covered person? Blah, blah, blah. May include the following: detention of war without trial until the end of hostilities authorized by the authorization for military force. Nothing in this section is intended to limit or expand the authority of the President or the scope of the authorization for use of military force. And nothing in this section shall be construed affecting existing law or authorities relating to the detention of United States citizens, law resident aliens of the United States, or any persons who are captured or arrested in the United States. So notice that this does not limit itself to foreign nationals. It can be foreign aliens, any of any documentation or stripe, color or stripe, and citizens of the U.S. So perceived, right? Not proven. And also, moving on to Section 1022, the requirement to detain a person in military custody under this section does not extend to the citizens of the United States. But the requirement to retain a person in military custody under the section does not require within, except pursuant permitted by the Constitution of the United States. So, this is, this is law, today. And I think, 2017 is not as scary as 2012, but something we should be, paying attention to. And if you're not, it's our loss of civil liberties if we don't. Now, let's move on to the Intelligence Authorization Act. The Intelligence Authorization Act is not law yet, but I'm having a hard time finding it again, of course. That's what I just showed you. It's the Mundt Act. I wish these slides were bigger. That's it. All right. So I'm going to just read you Section 501. And Section 501 is the is the section that is of interest here. So if I scroll way down, actually 502 is pretty interesting as well. Committee to counter active measures by the Russian Federation to exert covert influence over peoples and governments. So they define, active measures, basically what is Russia doing to exert covert influence. What I'll try to do here for you is just kind of read this in layman's term on the fly, as best I can do that, which is it's kind of a hard thing to do. So, 501 subsection 1 and headings A through H define, any of these persons or groups are under this act. So establishment of funding of a front group, covert broadcasting, media manipulation, disinformation and forgeries, funding agents of influence, incitement and offensive counterintelligence, assassinations, terrorist acts. So, moving on to subsection 2, appropriate committees of Congress. So the establishment, so basically what this section 501 does is defines the offenses, right, by the Russian Federation. You know, you promote bad news, you know, in headings A through H. We're going to define subgroups within, you know, so the DNI, the Director of National Intelligence, Secretary of State, Secretary of Defense, Treasury, Attorney General, Energy, FBI, the head of any agency or department in the U.S. government designated by the President for the purposes of this action. Basically, they're all going to have branches within, or committees rather, to counter these measures. And it goes forward to set mechanics, you know, meetings and duties, staff, budgets, reports, etc., to fight the Russian narrative. But so that's actually been reported by the same reporter, Mr. Emmons of Intercept. My first slide. So, but also Section 502, limitations on the travel of accredited diplomats and counselors of the Russian Federation in the United States from their diplomatic posts. And this is pretty harsh language, pretty harsh restrictions. So there's going to be a quarterly limitation on travel distances. So basically it states that any Russian diplomat in the United States cannot travel 25 miles radius from their post inside the United States unless they have written prior permission by the FBI. And it defines quarterly restrictions, so you have to do this every quarter. And you need to subsection B shall apply to each calendar quarter that begins 90 days after the date of the enactment of this act. All right. So the FBI may waive travel distances, etc. So this is pretty much diplomatic sanctions, if you will. And I'm just going to check in on the comments here. Oh my goodness, I have 22 comments. So, Ricky, provision in the NDAA section 1287. Publicly state that. I'm going to scroll down and scroll up. Hello, Marcella. Hello, Ricky. Creating narratives in the South Asian nations. This is why I love live streaming, because I get a lot of information that I haven't even discovered yet myself. So Ricky points out NDAA section 1287, which is creating narratives in South Asian nations. HR 5181. So that would be House of Representatives Bill 5181, and you could probably find that on the same site where I'm reading off to you the provisions of the Intelligence Authorization Act, and that's govtrack.us. So they actually have all the text of these bills and actually the status, whether they passed Congress, the House, the Senate, and so on. So that's very useful. So, covered person is someone hiding from government. All right, prison. Okay. 1287, Ricky points out, if you don't agree with the government and publicly state that, they can be considered a foreign state actor. So, too mad to comment. Aaron, yeah, I feel you. So, but thanks for watching. So, what other slides do I have for you? I guess, the narrative here is that, again, and this sort of ties into what I've been saying in maybe my last YouTube presentation, is that the entire kerfuffle about Russian propaganda in our it's almost like a fake war that we're waging against Russia. Russia doesn't, the Kremlin is not taking this seriously. So let's review what's happened since basically the holidays and today. So what have I missed? What we've missed is the reports that Russia, the fake report that Russia closed down an American English school for kids for expats in Moscow. Now, that was supposedly leaked by the U.S. government sources, but it turned out not to be true. The Kremlin, or Moscow's official spokesperson for Putin, came out with heavy language, I forget her name, language saying that unequivocally not true. And then the U.S. media was forced to back down. No, I don't believe, outlets like the Washington Post exactly retracted it. But then, even the next day, we have a fake report of the Vermont utility company claiming, they were hacked by Russian malware. And as soon as I read that story on Politico, and of course it was originally reported on the Washington Post, how useless is the Washington Post? What happened is that, as soon as I read that, I knew it was fake. And how did I know that? Because as soon as you started reading it, there were a couple of things, and Glenn Greenwald did a very good job in covering, going into detail and uncovering it. But if you've been paying attention to, how exactly malware works, discovering malware is not the same as attribution and is actually very dangerous to do. So just to give you an example, I'm just, glancing down at comments again, and I'll get to you in a minute, Jessica. Just to give you an example, let's take the Stuxnet virus, in Iran. When, how was the Stuxnet virus brought into public view? It wasn't obviously by a whistleblower. It wasn't, announced by any government entity. How it was discovered? It was discovered in the wild. So I believe it was a former Soviet bloc nation. It's not Albania, but a country, close to Albania, perhaps, that found the virus on their computers, and they submitted it as a sample for Symantec to analyze, and also Kaspersky, in Russia, got involved with their own independent analysis. And those two companies discovered the Stuxnet virus long after it had been deployed in the Iranian Natanz centrifuge facility, uranium enrichment centrifuge facilities. So what does that tell you? Just because you found a virus on your computer, you have no idea where it came from. So right there, the media had no idea what it's talking about. And I may sound like some sort of computer expert, which I'm not. I mean, I am, but I'm not. I'm not a top-notch, security professional. But I do work in technology. But I think this is 2017. I think even the average journalist knows that just because you find some malware in your web browser or Word document doesn't mean you know where it came from. So right off the bat, this story is bullshit. Second thing, they found it on a Windows laptop that was not connected to Vermont Power and Electric at all. So just the headline itself that the utility company was infected, not true. It was some guy's laptop that he took home and may or may not have been connected to the networks at Vermont Power and Electric. So we have now because of Glenn Greenwald's article, the Washington Post did retract that article. Now, and we see is this, but the damage is done. The narrative's out there. The Russians keep attacking us. They can keep the myth alive. So, and it's an opposite strategy, an inverse strategy, if you will, to something like the Clinton campaign, where they keep sweeping things under the rug. Now it's a strategy of, look, let's just hammer over and over a lie upon the American public's head, and maybe they'll finally accept it. So, the opposite strategy did not work, in which we just ignore things. I think we're too awake to let that happen at this point. So, let's see. Sandy is with us. Ricky said he's never heard of the Stuxnet virus. And, all right, the Stuxnet virus, there's a very good movie that I'll recommend. It's called 0 Days. And the Stuxnet virus is spelled Stuxnet. And it's actually a project of the National Security Agency, the NSA. And its code name is called Olympic Games. And its successor, which we haven't seen in the wild, is called Zeus Nitro. It promises to put Olympic Games Stuxnet into the prehistoric era in terms of cyber warfare. This is really scary stuff. 0 Days is an excellent movie if you want to get caught up on the state of cyber warfare. That's what I would look at. Now, let's take a look at some of your other comments here. Okay. Podesta clicking on this link. Yeah. All right. Okay. When I worked as a tech, half my time removing malware from desktops and laptops because people clicked on, Yeah, so Rona's in IT. She understands, how it works. Sandra's with us. How you doing, Sandra? Nice to see you. Happy New Year. Hope you're feeling well. Okay, so kind of caught up with comments here. So, I'm telling you that, and what I'm saying here, why do we have all this false narratives? It's easy to get really caught up in this is fake, that's fake. I haven't even got into things like the real fake news. A lot of people say, well, the fake news is the mainstream news, and that's true, but we haven't even gotten to discussion of the fake news of our own government and the fake news that we sponsor of other governments. We haven't talked about the White Helmets, the Aleppo News Center, what could possibly be, staged incidences abroad in terms of, opportune moments in where photographs are being taken of dead civilians, casualties, and who those casualties are attributed to. Are they attributed to why are they always attributed to, Bashar al-Assad? Why aren't they attributed to ISIS? Why aren't they attributed to Turkish forces or even American forces? We have committed some atrocities abroad too, inadvertently. But yes, we have killed civilians by bombing campaigns, by, all kinds of weapons, quite honestly. So has the Turkish government, in their 5-month war, ground assault on Syria. in Aleppo province. Right now the war rages in the city of Bab, B-A-B, or Al-Bab, if you will. You can look that up. So we haven't gotten into those fake narratives, right? We haven't gotten into, the first fake news that I remember, and I'm talking real fake news, is a site called Daily Newsbin. And Daily Newsbin was one of these weird breaking, with the red breaking in bold letters, looking like old school local news network news graphics. And they promoted a lot of fake stories about Hillary, and basically it was a pro-Hillary site, but a pro-Hillary opposition site. So they posted a lot of fake stuff about Bernie. I don't know if they were actually direct. No one could ever prove the direct connection between Daily Newsbin and the Hillary campaign, but we can certainly point to a direct connection between Media Matters for America and the Hillary campaign. The David Brock Hillary Media Matters for America. There are other sites out there. Digital Blue. There were a number of Occupy Democrats, Move On, whatever have you. These are all sponsored and fake news for Hillary's campaign. So you want to go after fake news? Let's start with them. But we're not even here to talk about that. What we're really here to talk about is what are they trying to keep us busy with all this media fake newsing. And what they're basically, I believe they're, again, hiding their motivations, and I said this in a prior talk, hiding their motivations as to why they're taking such aggressive action against the Russian government. And all signs lead to Syria. With Assad about to win, close out the war in Syria, Turkey having not much effect in turning the tide, Russia is going to benefit, or at least hold their economic position in terms of pipelines with Assad's, Assad's winning. So that is not a comfortable thing for the U.S. government, for big oil and this company. And this is, it's very convenient that the punishment being dealt out by these new laws, by the Intelligence Authorization Act, by the National Defense Authorization Act of 2017, happened to be coincidental with losing of Syria. The American interest in Syria being lost. So that's what I believe to be a very damning motivation. So I believe I've gone on for quite some time here. Stretched out the was a good exercise for my vocal cords. Oh, correct the record. Oh my God, how could I forget correct the record? So, bin. That was, trash clickbait, wasn't it? Jessica Burnett says. Yep, Jessica gets it. It's all about the pipelines. So, yeah. All right, guys. Well, I think it's been good. Sorry, wasn't feeling 100% tonight. I really appreciate you guys stopping by. And, I think 2017 is going to be a great year. We're going to keep this momentum going. I'm going to try and keep presenting you the reality, and I hope to bring you a lot of, on the ground footage and interesting interviews with, some major players down in DC at Occupy Inauguration. please do subscribe. It's very important for us to keep that going. And I'm going to try and hot load an image here. Where's my subscribe button? I had this nice graphic that my designer gave me to. It's not here. That's so sad. All right. Well, that's it. I'm going to close out. Thanks again, and have a good night. Peace.